Hello, everyone. Thanks for showing up for my cyber fraud. If you haven't met me before, I'm Roger Grimes. I've been doing computer security for 34 years. I've written 13 books and now probably over 1,200 magazine articles on cybersecurity. Here's some of my books. My latest is the Ransomware Protection Playbook. I work for KnowBe4. We're the largest security awareness training and simulated phishing platform vendor. We help people not to get phished, and a big way that people get hacked these days is phishing. So I'm kind of in the right company at the right time. Today, I'm going to talk about how and why hackers hack. A lot of people ask me, why are hackers, or why would the ransomware guy be attacking my organization? We're little or something like that. I'm going to talk about that, and then talk about probably the most important piece is I'll finish up this 30-minute talk with your best defenses that everyone should be doing to try to best stop malicious hackers and malware. But thanks for joining me, and I hope you learn a few things from this. There's really one of two major ways or reasons why you got hacked or your organization got hacked. Either it's usually because it's a kind of a random type of event. You're a victim of opportunity. Hackers around the world are sending out tens of millions of malicious phishing emails and malware and all that stuff. And they're just, that day, some employee in your company maybe accidentally clicked on the wrong link or opened the wrong email or visited the wrong website. So the vast majority of cybersecurity victims, cyber attackers, is people that just kind of randomly got caught. It just wasn't their day. Now, against that is another type of hacking where the hacker specifically targeted you or your organization. This is not nearly as popular, but it's becoming more popular. Probably tens of thousands of individuals and companies are specifically targeted by an adversary that wants to compromise them. And when I say tens of thousands, it may sound like a lot, but the reality is it's literally, tens of millions of these victim of opportunity attacks. So the random attacks are far more common, but basically you defend against them the same. And we'll talk about that at the end of this. No matter whether you're a targeted attack or a random attack, defending against both of those types are the same. But the first question that people always ask me is, why did the hacker target me besides possibly being a randomized target? Well, most hackers are in it for the money, not surprising. It's like, when they asked the bank robbers, back in the 1920s, why are you robbing banks? And supposedly infamous bank robber Willie Sutton said, well, that's because that's where the money is. Well, today the money is online, or has been for decades, and an attacker can steal money, and lots of money, with far less risk than physically, robbing a bank. So the vast majority of time when you or your organization has been hacked, the hacker is trying in some way to get your money, trying to steal from your bank account, your stock account, maybe doing ransomware and locking up your data and systems and saying, if you don't pay us, we're not going to release that data. Could be a distributed denial of service attack. That's what we call a DDoS. That could be where they're actually sending billions or trillions of malformed network packets against your company's website or service, making it go offline and saying, if you don't pay us $100,000 or $1 million, we're not going to let your company do business on the internet. Or carders, that would be like credit card people that are either trying to steal your credit card information or opening credit cards fraudulently in your name. The vast majority of hackers and malware exist to steal money. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's probably, 80, 90, maybe 95%, if I was to have my guess, is financially motivated. Now, we have seen an increase in nation state attackers. Every sufficiently capable nation has offensive hackers that are hacking other nations. But we certainly have this huge increase in different nation states and countries, notably China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, that are intentionally breaking into what's not considered traditional nation state targets. Traditionally, nation states and governments would break into other nations to get at military plans, political documents, things like that would help them further their, national government state interest. But these days, a lot of these countries, again, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, are literally doing cyber attacking against other countries' companies to steal intellectual property and also to steal money. They will steal out of people's bank accounts and stock accounts and cryptocurrencies. And like Russia is probably easily the biggest purveyor of ransomware. So you have lots of countries that have these offensive, hackers that are hired by the government to do the hacking. But it's only certain nation states, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, that breaks into individuals and company devices to steal money, right? The United States has lots of hackers, but they're probably not dropping off ransomware and asking for $20 million from that company if they don't pay the ransom. But that's been a big difference last year and this year is nation state attackers are just tens of thousands of companies being compromised through lots of very popular, well-known attacks over the last 2 years. So you could almost say it's been the year, or last year was certainly the year of the nation state attacker. Corporate espionage is still pretty popular in that you have your competitors and adversaries hiring hackers or hacking in themselves, or maybe sometimes it's ex-employees that are breaking into your company to get intellectual property, customer lists, business plans, contract information, still fairly popular. There's still a lot of companies have insider attacks where you have a trusted insider that is doing something against you or your company's best interest. A lot of times they're feeling aggrieved and wronged. Sometimes they're trying to hurt your company or cause operational problems. Sometimes they're stealing credit card information from customers and buying stuff. Sometimes they're stealing your customer lists. Really, their motivation for why they're doing it tends to be one of two things. Usually they feel aggrieved or wronged and want to get back in revenge of the company, or they want to steal money or something like that, or they're going to a new company and they want to bring some information along. Trusted insider attacks still fairly popular. And there's really lots of other reasons why people could be breaking into your devices and your companies. And I'm not going to cover them all in detail, but gamers are often attacking other gamers to cause problems so they can win games or steal their gamer credit information. Resource thieves are usually stealing borrowing, stealing your CPU and memory resources to do things like crypto mining. When you do crypto mining for Bitcoin in particular, it can take a lot of electricity and resources. And if they can steal that, it makes them more profitable at crypto mining. And hacktivists and hobbyists, and there are lots of reasons why people may be breaking in. But even most of them, many times, their motivation can be because of money, or they feel wronged or aggrieved or something like that. So unfortunately, lots of different reasons why hackers may be breaking into you. I will say that the biggest difference in my career, and I started in 1987 doing computer security, is that it's mostly professional today. It's, we say that the hackers have gone professional. Really, I like to say today, they've gone corporate. There are thousands and thousands of companies around the world that exist just to hack you and other people. Sometimes it's things like call centers in India and Sri Lanka where they're doing, they're pretending to be Microsoft tech support people and they're going to help you with a virus, but really they're actually installing malware on your system and charging you money for fake software. But even, the nation state attackers and the financial thieves and stuff, a lot of times they're really these professionally run organizations that have HR departments. They have salaries and paychecks and vacation time. They hire their developers on, regular websites that anybody would hire people from, like Indeed.com. But they're very, it's not the idea that it used to be, it's this lone attacker or some small gang of attackers that are in their basement drinking, Jolt Cola and eating Doritos. That hacker is really the minority today. Today, that hacker would be employed in some company or organization making a lot of money. It's gone pro. Here is the kind of the most common ways that the attacker workflow today, and that somebody is connected to the internet. You don't have to be connected to the internet to be successfully attacked, but most people that are compromised are connected to the internet. They usually get tricked into downloading a Trojan horse program. It's not always being tricked. That's usually the way that it happens 70 to 90% of the time, that they get tricked into downloading some program, or an email comes asking them to click on a link or to download a file, and this installs on their device this Trojan horse program. It can also be because somebody has unpatched software that has a vulnerability, and the attacker takes advantage of that and installs the Trojan. Or it could be because the attacker has either guessed or knows your password. A lot of times they get the password from some other attacker and just log directly in. But either way, this first initial Trojan horse stager program gets installed on this initial victim's device. It modifies that system in such a way so that it can live through a reboot or a power shutdown. And then normally it will collect a bunch of passwords. It will quickly look in your browser history and the browser password storage areas, grab your passwords, maybe look in memory, and then ship those passwords off to what's called its command and control servers. They'll always connect back out over the internet to their command and control servers. Those are usually computers that are usually other compromised people that are on the internet that are think, oh, my computer's so slow, I hate Windows, or my internet connection's so slow. And what they don't realize is that their computers are being used as these centralized command and control servers that the hackers, use to kind of control the different bots and malware programs and stagers on the other side. But the initial stager program will usually connect back to those staging servers and drop off the passwords they've stolen from that initial machine. They'll check to see if there's any new commands from the hacker director. They'll check to see if they have to update themselves. These stager programs will usually download at least 2 other malware programs, install them in 2 different places on that initial device. Usually antivirus is not detecting any of it, but if it did detect, usually it will detect 1 at most, but they're constantly re-encrypting themselves. But they'll actually connect and they'll find out, does the antivirus community detect us? They usually check it into Google's virustotal.com. If you don't know about this, Google has a free service called virustotal.com. It has like 75, 78 antivirus engines, and they can actually, the attacker knows what the signature is of their malware program, and they'll keep monitoring VirusTotal to see what virus engines are starting to detect their particular malicious program. And so those malicious programs are constantly updating themselves, sometimes up to 20 times a day. And so most of the time, these malicious programs are not very well detected. They're going undetected for days, weeks, months, years. The average ransomware program is in the average organization up to 8 months without being successfully detected by antivirus. Or if it does detect something, it detects 1, but they've downloaded 2 or 3. And so people are like, oh, I got rid of the ransomware attack. But months later, like, oh, I got hit by ransomware again. You didn't get hit by it again. There was just something hiding there because you didn't completely rebuild your systems and you just missed those other malware programs. But eventually the hackers that are in charge of this particular stager ransomware program goes up into the command and control servers. It gets notified by the command and control servers, and they get a list of all the things their bots have broken into that day, that week, that month, and they pick and choose. Usually the bot will collect a little bit of information like network name, Active Directory network name, host name, so that they'll kind of get an idea what type of company they're in. The hackers will pick and choose which companies they will, break into at that particular time or investigate further. And that's because, or people will say, oh, I didn't get hacked, or they'll find out the program was in their company for 5 months, 8 months, 2 years. I'm like, why was it there so long? And that's just because the hacker had a long list of people to go through and he finally got to your company. But once they finally decide to concentrate on your company, they'll usually log in remotely to your servers. They will eavesdrop on emails. They will look for financial statements. They're looking to find information that will tell them how much money they can charge your company, what information they can steal and resell, what passwords, everything that every employee is typing, why these ransomware programs and stager programs are on your systems. So, you're going to Amazon or Google or Twitter or whatever, anything you type in, anything your browser is logging into automatically, they're capturing those login names and passwords and getting them to reuse for their own purposes or to resell to other people, or to, again, to try to get, usually financial information. Again, the hackers, the malware programs would typically be in the typical environment for 8 to 12 months. I've seen them in there for years before. Then they'll come in and look at financial information, try to figure out how much money they can charge for ransom extortion. They'll steal information that they can resell. They get passwords. Eventually, they steal whatever they want. Then finally, if it's ransomware, they'll lock up that information with some type of encryption program and then charge extortion. This is the way most attackers work today. It's this combination of initial malware programs, and then the hacker comes in, starts looking around. He's uploading different scripts and programs he actually looks at the way that the company does their business, how they log in remotely. If you use, Microsoft Remote Desktop Protocol, that's what they're going to use. If you use, Log Me In or VNC or something like that, that's what the hacker's going to do. So it's very difficult for your organization to detect that, hey, it just happens to be an attacker coming in this time. If it is ransomware, they do a lot more than just encrypting data. They steal your intellectual property. They steal your own data. They steal your passwords, every credential they can, all the business passwords, all the employee passwords. If you have a customer website that they can get to, they'll steal your customer websites. They will threaten to extort. If you don't pay the ransom, they'll actually extort your employees and customers and tell them, hey, we're only doing this because your boss or the company you do business with, they didn't care to protect your information in the first place. And we got to it. And now they don't want to pay the ransom. And so we're going to ask and attack you. They will use your compromised computer to they'll actually take a look at your email inbox and your sent emails, and then use those to send emails to people that trust you, to friends, family, and other trusted business partners to help spread their malware even more. So the whole idea of like, hey, never accept an email that's asking you to do something strange if it comes from someone you don't know. Well, this email is coming from somebody you know and trust and have possibly had a relationship for years. And maybe you don't understand why they're asking you to open up this PDF or click on this link. But people do, and then they get compromised and the whole thing goes on. A lot of times they will publicly post in Twitter and Instagram and other places and on the web, both the public web and the dark web. Here's all the companies we've broken into. Here's an example of the data we've stolen. So they give examples to show you that, hey, they really are in that company. And the whole reason I mention all of this about ransomware in particular is, good luck having a data backup protect you. This today is what over 80% of ransomware. We think today, the latest stats are saying 84% of ransomware does everything that I just said, stealing all that information and publicly shaming you and attacking employees and customers and that sort of stuff. Very, very common today. If you get hit by ransomware that only encrypts your data and doesn't steal the data, consider yourself lucky, because that just means you got hit by one of the dumb ones. Lots of different threats attacking us every day. There's over 20,142 vulnerabilities alone last year that we were told that we had to patch just in 1 year. That's somewhere between 11 and 55 a day that's being announced on average. Although I think the record was like 170 or 180 different exploits that were announced in a particular day. And that's on top of the hundreds of millions of malware programs, and on top of all the different types of hackers and reasons why they might hack you before. A lot of cybersecurity threats coming our way. Here are the 12 ways that they can break into your device or your company or your network. Here it is. I've been covering this, trying to figure, every time I saw a hack or a malware event, I recorded how did they break in. Here's the 12 what we call root cause exploit methods. Every single hacker and malware program breaks into a device using one of these 12 methods. And I don't want to go through all of these, but I do want to get to this particular slide. And this is really, really important. So if I'm putting you to sleep, wake up for this. It's one of the most important things you can learn, is that the vast majority of hackers and malware successfully break into companies because of social engineering. It is estimated between 70 to 90% of all malicious data breaches involve social engineering, tricking somebody into clicking on a link or downloading a file or revealing their password. 70 to 90% is caused by one thing, social engineering. 20 to 40% of attacks involve unpatched software, usually where someone has vulnerable software and the vendor has a patch, but the person did not apply the patch for some reason or relate to doing it, and it got exploited. And then there's a third thing. That third thing changes over time. Social engineering and unpatched software have been the number one, number two reasons how devices and people and companies get compromised since the beginning of computers. It hasn't changed. It's been that way for over 30 years. The third thing kind of changes. Like back when I started in computer security in 1987, it was DOS boot viruses. And I don't know if anyone's old enough to remember the advice, hey, make sure you pop the floppy disk out of the floppy disk drive before you reboot your computer. Well, those don't bother us anymore. Today, it's password attacks. So they've either got your password, they've social engineered your password, they've captured your login name and password from a website they've compromised, or they guess against your password. That's the third most common reason today. That's involved in about 10 to 15% of attacks. And then every other attack method you've heard of, trusted insiders, eavesdropping, physical attacks, whatever, is only responsible for less than 10% of attacks. And what this should tell you is that if you don't try to prevent social engineering and patch your software, you're not going to stop hackers or malware. That's how they're breaking in. Fight social engineering, patch your software, and do a really good job with your passwords, and that will help protect you. That's part of what I'll follow with at the end about the best ways to defend yourself. Some people might say, what's phishing? That's again where there's someone sending you a fraudulent email. They're pretending to be somebody that you might otherwise trust better than if you thought it was some Nigerian scammer or unknown Russian or Chinese person. But they'll pretend to be, LinkedIn or Microsoft or Facebook or Twitter, but they're just trying to trick you into clicking on a link or downloading some content or maybe paying a fake invoice. This is a fake invoice example where companies claiming that, we're for Maersk.com, which is, if I'm saying that right, the largest shipping and container company. They sent it to me. I was a writer for InfoWorld for over 15 years, but I don't pay invoices, so I knew it was fake. But they're saying, click here, download this invoice. And if I was to download that invoice, it would either have a malicious link in it trying to compromise me with a link, or they were just trying to get me to pay some fake invoice that, does. And if you look at this email, it doesn't come from Maersk.com. It comes from onlinecom.pl from Poland. An invoice from Maersk would come from Maersk.com, not from this other place, onlinealex.com.pl from Poland. Don't know what that is. SMS, smishing, phishing messages are really, really common today. Like the one on the upper right hand, these are all real phishes I've gotten. But one on the upper right there says, account locked, Wells Fargo customer service, your account has been locked. Well, I don't have a Wells Fargo banking account, but Wells Fargo is the largest bank in the world. And so there's probably a lot of people that get that text that freak out and click on that link. Or the one on the bottom right, that's actually from a friend of mine called Stephanie. She got one of those fake, hey, we tried to deliver your package, but you weren't home. I think we've all gotten those from fake Amazon and DHL. They're claiming to be from Amazon or DHL, but this one surprised Stephanie because she said, hey, they've got my name. How did they get my name? I think it's fake, Roger. And I went to that link and it was a malicious link that tried to download malware on her system. But she said, how'd they get my name? I said, they can look up your name and phone number, and that's when they send you the text. And if they, with your name there, you think, oh, it's, this must be real, or more likely to get people that think it's real. Another way, if it's not malware, it's human adversaries. There's different ways they can break in, usually social engineering, or if you've got unpatched software, that's a really common way. One of the most common ways when a human adversary is involved is they will scan your network looking for an unpatched vulnerability. Remember, I said there was over just last year, 20,142 vulnerabilities that we announced that someone needed to patch, 11 to 55 a day on average. It is really easy for human attackers to find unpatched software. As a matter of fact, in my career, I was a professional penetration tester hacker, paid to break into places. In my 22-year career of breaking into places, being paid to do it legally, I broke into every place that hired me to break into them in an hour or less, except for one place that took me 3 to 5 hours. And let me say, I was usually given 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks to break in, but it usually took under an hour using this exact method because I never found a single device, much less a whole network that had everything patched. So what the attacker does is they have to find a vulnerability first. They have to have what's called an exploit or vulnerability scanning tool. The most common one anybody can download is called Nmap. Nmap is freely downloadable, been around for 20 years. And you just say Nmap, the name of the network, knowbefore.com or whatever. and it will start to tell you all the different types of software they have and the version numbers. And the version number is important because the version number will tell you whether or not that software is fully patched. You almost always find something that's not patched. Then the attacker goes to the many websites that have exploit software out there. Here's an example. You can go to ExploitDB. It's been around for decades, has over 44,000 different exploits. So if I find a vulnerability, in this case, let's say in Microsoft, some Microsoft software, I can go get that exploit, download it. Sometimes I have to compile it, and boom, I'm in that company. And let me say, there's lots of exploitation tools out there, free and commercial. Like Metasploit's a really common one. It has over 3,000 exploit modules. They sell a commercial version, but there's a free version. Lots of hackers use it. But you can say, oh, I need to break into a Windows system or a Mac system or WordPress or whatever. And you can literally, using their free software, break into a company. Here's another software, really popular hacker program called Mimikatz. It's been around for well over a decade. It only works on Windows systems, but if you log in, if you're able to use one of the previous exploits and get to a Windows system, you can then run Mimikatz, and Mimikatz will download what's called the password hashes or passwords that it can find in memory, and then you can use those passwords and password hashes to log in all over the network. So I break into one machine, and then I capture as many of the administrator passwords as I can. That allows me to take over the system and get more systems in control, and eventually take over and find all the passwords. The average length of time today from an attacker taking over one device in a network or in a company to taking over all the passwords and information in a company, about 8 minutes. And a lot of times they're using Mimikatz. Maybe they might use Empire Toolkit, very common tool. Anybody can still go to this website today and download this tool. It literally has dozens and dozens of attacks that allow you to crack and break into Windows systems, Linux systems, Unix systems, and it even integrates with Mimikatz and Metasploit, free tool that anybody can download. I took a screenshot here. At the time when I took that screenshot, had over 285 different attack modules. And there are hundreds of these sort of tools out there for anybody to download and use, and they do. And here's an example, some of the exploit modules they have. One allows me, the top one would allow me as an attacker to install what's called an AppleScript stager on somebody's Apple system that I could then send an email and trigger an attack. So I could, using this particular vulnerability, log into somebody's Apple system and say, oh, if I send an email that's got the word frog in it, format the hard drive, or that sort of stuff. Or I can also listen to you on your mic or turn on your webcam and so on. Or I can key log you on a Linux system. I can log your password as you type it in. It's all very common. And some people say, well, what if I have MFA? Doesn't MFA, multi-factor authentication, MFA is usually like, you're getting a code on your cell phone, 6-digit code, or you have some USB key that you're plugging into your computer. Doesn't that protect me? Not always. This particular attack I'm getting ready to show you, I'm going to show you a demo of it, works against 95% of MFA, but essentially a hacker, they can send you a phishing email that has a fake link in it. And if they trick you into clicking on it and you think it's taking you to the real website, but really it takes you to what's called a man-in-the-middle website that then everything that you type in, it captures. So you click on the link, it takes you to the fake man-in-the-middle website. They then connect you to the real website you thought you were going to in the first place. But they can now sniff and capture any login name and password you type, or your 4-digit MFA code or 6-digit MFA code they can collect. They can even grab what's called your access control token cookie. Every time you log into a website successfully, that website will send you this access control cookie. It's just a text file, but basically it's kind of like the driver's license. It says, hey, this person is logged on in. They can intercept that, steal that, and take over the session. Well, I'm going to show you a quick little video here that shows you how this attack works. And again, it works against 95% of all multi-factor authentication today. I've got a link for you later on. You can download this slide deck and look at this. I'm going to show you a shorter version of this demo, but you can go watch this. I think the original video is 5-6 minutes long, but it's a really interesting attack to see. So here it is. I'm going to be quiet for a minute or so.
So I'm logged into my Gmail account, and if you take a look in the second email here, I'll go ahead and open it. It appears to be an email from LinkedIn. And ordinarily, when somebody wants to join your network on LinkedIn, LinkedIn will actually send an email to your email address notifying you of that. And if you're interested, you can go ahead and click interested, log into your LinkedIn account, and authorize that person to actually become a connection. So if we take a look here, we have an email from LinkedIn that says, Kevin, I've read about your adventures in Ghost in the Wires and so on, and this person wants to join my network. But this is actually a phishing attack. If we take a look here at where the email is originating from, it's not at linkedin.com, it's at this domain called llnked.com, which people might overlook. So let's go ahead and pretend that we're the victim here and go ahead and click on interested. And what that is going to do, it's going to redirect us to the LinkedIn website to go ahead and log in. But let's move this over to the right and let that load. And if you take a look over here, we have a blank white page, which is going to become very important in a moment. And this is the attacker terminal session. So let's go ahead and bring back the virtual machine that's now connected to LinkedIn to authenticate, because we, again, clicked on interested in the email. So we'll go ahead and put in a username, Johnny Boy at mitnicksecurity.com. And now we're going to go ahead and put in our secret password. And now we're going to go ahead and click sign in. And when we click sign in, it's not going to allow us to log in. What LinkedIn is going to do is request our two-factor authentication code that LinkedIn is going to actually send to my mobile phone. And in a moment, you should hear a sound that the text message was received on my mobile phone. So let's go ahead and click sign in. And here we go. It's telling us that two-step authentication is enabled. We just heard a message come into my mobile device. We're going to uncheck this box that says recognize this device in the future. And I'm going to open my mobile device to take a look and see what the text message is, or what the code is rather. So the code here is 421476. We're going to go ahead and click verify. And when we do so, it's going to log us into my LinkedIn account. So now we're logged into the LinkedIn account, but let's take a look at the attacker session over here on the left. So we're going to scoot this over to the right. And over here, what we have is what we're able to intercept. So we're able to intercept the email address, which is johnnyboy@mitnicksecurity.com. We're also able to intercept the password to the account, which is KnowBeforeRocks. And over here, this is not the actual 6-digit code that was intercepted, because you can't really use the 6-digit code again, the second factor. But what we're able to do is intercept the session cookie. And if you're able to steal the session cookie, or if rather the attacker is able to do so, they don't even need your username or password or second factor code. They could simply load the session key into a browser and they actually become you. So let me show you how this works. We're going to highlight the cookie. We're going to copy it to the clipboard. And then we're simply going to open up Chrome in incognito mode. And incognito mode just means with privacy. So now we're going to go to the real LinkedIn website. When we go here, obviously we're not authenticated. Now it's, wants us to log in with our credentials, but we don't have to do so. We're going to go ahead and go into Developer Tools. We're going to go into the console, and what we're going to paste into the console is the session cookie that we stole from the victim, which was myself, by the way. I'm going to enter it. I'm going to go ahead and close the session. Now, all I simply have to do to be logged into the victim's account with their session cookie is simply hit refresh now. So I hit refresh, and here we are. We've logged in, or rather hacked my own account.
So that's probably pretty wild if you've never seen that before. Again, just by, a lot of people think, oh, I have MFA and, I'm less likely to be hacked. Nope, a simple phishing email can get you. So considering all the different ways you can be hacked, How should you defend yourself? Here you go. Number one, mitigate social engineering. Stop people from being tricked by funny emails and websites and stuff that try to trick them into clicking on links they shouldn't click on. Social engineering is involved in 70 to 90% of all attacks. So if you don't try to stop social engineering, or your employees or coworkers or family or friends from being socially engineered, they're just going to fall prey to the hackers or malware. Patch your internet accessible software. So anytime your software says, hey, install this update, you should install it as long as it's the real update. Although if you want to know what software do you really have to patch, remember last year there's 20,142 things you had to patch. Well, that list there, the link I have there is to CISA.gov. That's a US organization, but it actually lists all the software that is being actively used by hackers to attack companies. And it's not 20,142 things, it's only hundreds of things. But if you want to know what do I need to patch, it's that list. Also, even though you can get around multi-factor authentication, you should use multi-factor authentication where you can and where you can't, because you're going to have to use passwords. Make sure you use strong, non-guessable passwords. The biggest thing is to make sure that you have a different password for every website and service you go to. So you need a different, long, unguessable password for every website and service. A lot of times we say use a password manager. I think everyone should be using a password manager. And teach yourself and your friends and your family and loved ones and coworkers how to spot rogue URLs. Most phishing attacks have those crazy links in them that take people to the wrong place. I've got two links there. The first top link there is actually to a 1-hour webinar. So if you want to be bored by me showing you all the different ways you can be tricked by a rogue URL, that's a good 1-hour webinar. If you read the second thing, it's just an article that I wrote. And actually, the first one's an article. The second one is the 1-hour webinar, but you can read an article or the webinar. But try everything you can to stop being socially engineered, stop phishing. If you want to know everything you can do to stop phishing, I wrote I've got a 1-hour webinar if you want to be bored by me that way, or I wrote a 49-page ebook. My wife says it's guaranteed to put you to sleep, but it has every single thing that I could think of to stop social engineering and phishing. Also, make sure to train your end users how to spot badness, because they will, no matter how good your defenses are, some amount of phishing and social engineering will get through your defenses to their inboxes and to their web browser. So train your end users and yourself how to spot phishing attacks, badness as I call it, and how to respond, which is usually, hopefully, to report it to IT or IT security, the help desk, or at the very least to delete it and ignore it. If you want to, you can go to the link at the bottom of this page and actually download our social engineering red flags poster. It talks about the 22 ways, the 22 signs that might show someone that an email that they got is a social engineering email. That's a really good PDF that you can print up, sign, send to anybody. I created the red flags of rogue URLs. You can go to this link at the bottom of the screen, download that PDF, and that PDF is a good one to pass around. It talks about the 12 most common URL tricks that hackers use to try to trick people into clicking on links when they shouldn't. With that said, thanks for putting up with me for the last 35 minutes. If you have any questions after this talk, feel free to email me at rogerg@knowbefore.com. And also you can follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter. But thanks so much for listening to me. Fight the good fight and make sure to fight the right things, right? You want to fight social engineering, unpatched software, and certainly use a different login name and password for any website that requires a password. And with that, again, go fight the good fight.